Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, Judge. My name is Josephine Lee, and today I will be reading an excerpt from A Long Walk to Water by Linda Sue Park. From the perspective of Salva Dut, an 11-year-old Dinka boy in 1985, the world feels like everything has fallen apart. He doesn't know where his family is, where to go, and how to survive. But now, Salva Dut is a Sudanese activist who is advocating for sanitation, hygiene, and adequate water access, and believes that it is critical for preventing diseases. At the age of 11, the gunfire that was shot in his village changed his next 16 years of life. Salva tries to be resilient and vows that one day he will reunite with his family and come back to his home. A Long Walk to Water shows how many people are suffering and once again proves the cruelty of war. I chose A Long Walk to Water because it is a powerful story of a Dinka boy fighting for his life and how he survives the impossible. It shows the heartwarming and nerve-wracking journey of Salva Dut. We pick up the story of Ethiopian soldiers chasing everyone from the refugee camp to the Gilo, a well-known crocodile river. Hundreds of people lined the riverbank. The soldiers were forcing some of them into the water, prodding them with their rifle butts, shooting into the air. Other people, afraid of the soldiers and their guns, were leaping into the water on their own. They were immediately swept downstream by the powerful current. As Salva crouched on the bank and watched, a young man near him plunged into the water. The current carried him swiftly downstream, but he was also making a little progress across the river. Then Salva saw the telltale flick of a crocodile's tail as it flopped into the water near the young man. Moments later, the man's head jerked oddly. Once, twice. His mouth was open. Perhaps he was screaming. But Salva could not hear him over the din of the crowd and the rain. A moment later, the man was pulled under. A cloud of red stained the water. The rain was still pouring down, and now bullets were pouring down as well. The soldiers started shooting into the river, aiming their guns at the people who were trying to get across. Why? Why are they shooting at us? Salva had no choice. He jumped into the water and began to swim. The boy next to him grabbed him around the neck and clung to him tightly. Salva was forced under the surface without time to take more than a quick, shallow breath. Salva struggled, kicking, clawing. He's holding on to me too hard. I can't. No air left. Suddenly, the boy's grip loosened, and Salva launched himself upward. He threw his head back and took a huge gulp of air. For a few moments, he could do nothing but gasp and choke. When his vision cleared, he saw why the boy had let go. He was floating with his head down, blood streaming from a bullet hole in the back of his neck. Stunned, Salva realized that being forced under the water had probably saved his life, but there was no time to marvel over this. More crocodiles were launching themselves off the banks. The rain, the mad current, the bullets, the crocodiles, the welter of arms and legs, the screams, the blood. He had to get across somehow. Salva did not know how long he was in the water. It felt like hours, it felt like years. When at last the tip of his toes touched mud, he forced his limbs to make swimming motions one last time. He crawled onto the riverbank and collapsed. Then he lay there in the mud, choking and sobbing for breath. Later, he will learn that at least 1,000 people had died trying to cross the river that day, drowned or shot or attacked by crocodiles. How was it that he was not one of the 1,000? Why was he one of the lucky ones? The walking began again. Walking. But to where? No one knew anything for sure. Where was Salva supposed to go? Not home. There is still war everywhere in Sudan. Not back to Ethiopia. The soldiers would shoot us. Kenya. There are supposed to be refugee camps in Kenya. Salva made up his mind. He would walk south to Kenya. He did not know what he would find once he got there, but it seemed to be his best choice. Crowds of other boys followed him. Nobody talked about it. But by the end of the day, Salva had become the leader of a group of about 1,500 boys. Some were as young as 5 years old. They were traveling through a part of Sudan still plagued by war. The fighting and bombing were worse during the day, so Salva decided that the group should hide when the sun shone and do their walking at night. But in the darkness, it was hard to be sure they were traveling in the right direction. Sometimes the boys traveled for days only to realize that they had gone in a huge circle. This happened so many times that Salva lost count. They met other boys, all walking south. Every group had stories of terrible peril, boys who had been hurt or killed, or by bullets or bombs, attacked by wild animals, or left behind because they were too weak or sick to keep up. When Salva heard the stories, he thought of Mariel. He felt his determination growing as it had in the days after Uncle's death. I will get us back to safely to Kenya, he thought, no matter how hard it is. There were times when some of the boys did not want to do their share of work. Salva would talk to them, encourage them, coax them, and persuade them. Once in a while he had to speak sternly or even shout, but he had tried to not do this often. It was as if Salva's family were helping him, even though they were not there. He remembered how he looked after his little brother, Cole, but he also knew what it felt like to have to listen to the older ones, Eric and Ring, and he could recall the gentleness of his sisters, the strength of his father, the care of his mother. Most of all, he remembered how Uncle had encouraged him in the desert. One step at a time, one day at a time. Just today, just this day to get through. Thank you.